Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E360 Tech Sessions podcast. I'm John Trujillo, Field CTO at E360. I'm here today with Roy Douber, Principal Solutions Architect at E360. Today, we're going to talk about what's driving AI adoption in the enterprise and what are some of the challenges, and more importantly, the opportunities associated with that adoption. So, Roy, welcome this morning. Thanks for joining me. There's obviously a huge amount of buzz around AI right now. When you look at E360's clients in the broader market, what do you see actually driving AI adoption? What use cases are creating real value, and how quickly are organizations seeing that value, especially with platforms like Google and Gemini becoming more enterprise ready?
Hey, John, thanks for having me here. That's a really interesting question, right? I feel like we're at the early adoption phases of this, and so people are just kind of playing across all the tools that are available. So adoption is everywhere, but I think the challenge at the organization level is that value, or the measurement of value, is often absent, right? So there's that famous, I think everybody's seen it at this point, where it's like, how do you, 95% of companies are using AI, and only the return on investment is relatively low.
Can I interject there?
Yeah, for sure.
So that return on investment, in my experience, I don't know yours, is organizations jump into AI without sufficiently understanding what business objectives they're trying to reach, and what metrics are going to be impacted. So can you talk about that a little bit and help us get a better understanding of how organizations can avoid that pitfall?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think it's natural for people to jump in when you have a force multiplier that exists like AI, and it's improvements across the board for almost, I would say, anybody. It's not almost anybody. It's anybody that's a user immediately can see what the benefits are, and it's extremely beneficial. So I don't fault organizations for jumping head first, but I think once you jump head first, the plane is in the air, right? And you need to then figure out how do you continue building the plane while it's already flying. So what I would say is, Google specifically, I think from a platform perspective, from the Gemini Enterprise Suite, has kind of everything you would need to get started, and all the guardrails, and the know-how and the documentation that gives you kind of sufficient care and feeding of the environment, so that you can grow your business as required as you go through the journey, right? Like it's a journey, not a destination, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, from what I've seen, where there's really like good versus bad, I don't think there's good versus bad, but more of like who is adopting it well, right? I feel like the winners right now that I see in the space, they've redesigned the workflow to accommodate AI, and they've recognized that the models are not really the differentiators, right?
So let's go back to designing it well. So, at E360, we have this concept of advise, build, manage. Right. And that advise phase is critical to getting it right. So, in my own experience and practice, I'm seeing a lot of interest around AI governance and understanding the appropriate business and security context for AI adoption. What are some of the things that, in your experience, organizations are doing right and maybe may need to be a little bit more aware of?
Yeah, I think all organizations right now are clamoring to figure out how they're going to, like I said, the plane's in the air, and the organizations are trying to figure out how they can, reinforce and build the plane while it's flying. So, evaluating their data residency, evaluating their security controls, evaluating how they can contain certain usage that may not be appropriate for a large organization. All of these things come to mind. And again, also it's in many cases, let's say they have external vendors that are working in the company. How do they prevent exfiltration of data, right? Like it's very easy. Data retrieval has become very easy now. As long as you have some level of access, you can, and the AI will query the entire data set and give you insights around the entire data sets. How do you control that? It's a very interesting time. There's a lot of product out there, and it's as a consultancy, it's really hard to recommend one versus the other too, because you don't know where a company is going to be a week from now, right? Like we're seeing what I'm looking at in the industry right now is almost like an acquisition a day, or an acquisition every other day. So it's really hard to keep up. The models are changing every day. The best model is changing every day. Who has the coolest latest feature is changing every day. And I think even as a consultancy, we're operating in the plane is in the air, and how do we have all the telemetry and then the signal versus all the noise that exists out there, and where can we impact the organizations in the best way?
Understood. So kind of continuing along the line of building it right, getting governance right, a lot of the opportunity that I've been able to discern in the businesses is that's the concept of a citizen developer, right? The people closest to the work are the ones that know where the opportunities for optimization exist. And there's a real sort of struggle with organizations in terms of how do I tap into that power and that skill and that intellect of my people, but how do I govern it correctly so that we don't have total chaos, but still tap in? So what are you seeing in that realm?
Yeah, I'll start by saying I've seen this. I've seen various approaches taken at different organizations. And what I'd like to encourage most companies to do is to keep the people that are closest to the work in the system, because they can see the inefficiencies. So don't lock them out. I think there is better ways to manage things, and you can run certain tooling in shadow mode, so you could see what people are doing, and then slowly but surely, again, like we're talking about the planes already flying, right? Add the seat belts, add the proper guardrails to the plane as it's flying, so that the citizen developer has a chance to develop in their AI journey too, right? Like, I think we're what, 3 years into the journey now. I think it's time that everybody had unfettered access to AI, and we figure out as IT practitioners, as consultancies, how to enable without killing the spirit of innovation, right?
Makes sense.
And then at Google, for example, there is data loss protection, there is masking of data that you could do, there's all this identity scoped access that you could do. You can introduce an AI gateway, and I think that's the path I would prefer going. It's govern, but don't restrict, right? And yes, there will be some use cases where maybe you let the plane fly too close to the mountain, or maybe you even went too high in altitude. But I think that's part of the journey, part of the learning process. Everybody's learning right now.
So kind of following up on that concept of everyone's learning, I'm seeing AI adoption coming from two directions. Sometimes it's the senior executive saying, go make it happen, figure it out, make it happen now. I'm also seeing it from the bottom up, where it's the rank and file or more middle management saying, "Hey, we need to start embracing and leveraging the incredible power of AI," but the executives are more concerned around it. So, what are some of those major concerns that, in your experience, you've seen executives be hesitant about AI adoption, and how do we help them address those concerns in an appropriate, secure, regulatory manner?
Yeah. So, whoa, loaded question. So executives, I don't think executives are slowing the process down or are concerned with slowing the process down for the sake of slowing it down. I think that what the challenge that executives are presented with is they've seen the pilot and they're trying to figure out how it affects their P&L. And
Exactly.
that's always
Exactly.
that's always the challenge, is like P&L, and from a security perspective, where is all this data going and how does this affect my business if somebody else gets a hold of it that shouldn't, right? Like
Yeah.
those are the challenges.
Yeah,
In my mind.
and for me, what in E360's advisory practice, one of the things that we talk about with the technical folks is there needs to be a methodology, a consistent, repeatable methodology around how do we assign true business value to any AI initiative, so that when we start talking to the CFO, he or she understands, okay, we invested in this initiative, and here are the tangible P&L benefits of that initiative, which becomes a flywheel, right? When we can show empirically that AI is driving true business value and helping improve the bottom line, it's a self-improving mechanism where there's more funds available. Whereas when we can't do that, the senior executives are like, why am I spending all this money? Show me the benefit of it. Are you seeing kind of the same thing?
Yeah, and as an observability practitioner, this is something that's in my mind already solved in many ways, right? Like, so I'll give my examples of leveraging this in the past, even before AI. When we would intake a project as a site reliability engineer, we would look at the value and the engineering cost of something being automated versus manual, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't save 500 hours of engineering in a year or in a month, depending on the scope and size of the business, then it might not be worth building. But today, more and more of those use cases are relevant, right? Like, for example, I'll give an E360 example. We have a lot of internal decks that we're building and that are mostly repeatable. So I've created a generator internally that allows us to create some of these decks, and they're mostly 99, 98% complete, right? And the cost savings, the ROI on that is baked into the application. So as a practitioner, what you often need to ask is, okay, if we take this process of creating a kickoff deck for a project, how long does that take? It takes you and it might take the practitioners, even with copy pasting from ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, it might take them an hour to still create that deck with the proper data. What if you could trim that to 2 minutes, right? What is the cost differential on that? And so that's what goes in my mind. And then how many PMs does that then, or how many individuals does that affect? And can you calculate that value live? And the answer is typically yes, right? Like, so, what you do is you run a pilot and say, hey, use this. How much time did it save you? Like, if you had to build this exact deck yourself for a kickoff, how much did it take? And the answer varied from like an hour to an hour and 30 minutes, let's say. And then you say, okay, well, based on that, I'll just use the minimum or use an average of the time between a few practitioners and say, okay, this is my time savings for this function. and then you create a dashboard that takes the cost of running the model, running the application, and spitting out the the PowerPoint deck. And that's how you calculate ROI. I think it's relatively, like the math makes sense. It's easy to do. I think it's a step that we often skip, like observability in many cases. It's only like when you have an outage that it becomes a problem. Like what happened, guys? I don't know. We didn't have the data, right? So it's I think this is something that we can collectively improve on across the board. And I think it's part of the governance story, right? I think if you have proper governance, proper observability in place, that's your AI velocity story. Like you need to have those pieces in place so that as an executive, you can sleep at night, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's my impression.
Thank you for that. So, we've talked about the financials aspect of getting AI governance correct. For an organization that's just starting on their AI journey and trying to understand what they don't know and what they would like to know, what are some of the key points for them to keep in mind? What's your advice for an organization from a governance, trying to get governance correct? We talked about, again, the financial, the return on investment aspect of it. What are some of the other aspects that you think are important?
I think where I see a lot of organizations right now is they're in the kind of, I have a piece of paper that suggests that this is what we're doing in the environment, right? Like we've went through our AI discovery, we understand the use cases, and this is how we want to govern, and you shall read the AI rules because these are the AI rules. But in reality, I think enforcement is the challenge right now, right? Like that's where we're seeing, all of the, all the organization come our way and say, oh yeah, which model is allowed? What's not allowed? Where can we send our data? What's the terms of service of where we send, right? Like how do we, and that's where we see is kind of the Wild West across a lot of companies. And so I guess my best advice is to put the controls where the request actually flows. The rest is just, to me, the rest is just theater, right? It's just like the olden days where you needed to steer networking traffic appropriately in the business. You need to steer your AI traffic and block your AI traffic where it's needed, right? Like, I'll give the example, right? Like maybe your company is sensitive to a certain company, or maybe a certain even Chinese entity, right? You might not want to send your data to DeepSeek as an example, right? That needs to be a control that's enforced. If you have a networking OSI model, it needs to be enforced at layer 7. It could be enforced at layer 4. It probably can be enforced at layer 5 and 6 as well, right? So you want to put the guardrails in place, and then all of a sudden the engineers are going to realize, oh wait, this doesn't work anymore. Maybe it breaks their application. Luckily nowadays, with AI, you also get the benefit of refactoring your application really quickly to use a different model. So I think yeah, the plane is flying. We need to make sure that we understand terms of service, that the engineers understand terms of service and how things work and who's indexing their data and whether it's safe or not for the organization, and adapt. I really think, to some extent, the model is the moat, but to some extent, the model might not be the moat, right? Like to me, the platform might be more of a moat for organizations than the model itself. And what I mean by that is having all the tooling in one place to control it might be a bigger moat than how smart the model is over time. And that's where I think actually Google has a really big leg up on the competition. It's all the tooling in one place. And so whereas, Anthropic and OpenAI provide really, really smart models, Google provides the entire stack in a singular cloud that you can secure and control. And I see that, and they're the only large cloud provider that has a model that competes with the, call it the leaders of now in AI.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I think,
So,
yeah. Go for it.
so as AI becomes more prevalent, and to your, I think, part of the point you just made, more powerful, and to some degree more autonomous, to the degree that organizations are willing to allow it to become autonomous, how does that change the governance conversation? Right? We talked about controls and Google having a full suite of tools for governance and controls, but in your view, we want to make AI as effective from a business perspective as possible. But as it becomes more intelligent and more autonomous, in your view, how do we address that, tapping into that power without letting the genie get too far out of the bottle?
Yeah. So I think there is some steering of traffic that needs to happen. Like we talked about, like you have model armor, you have approved model routing, you have the audit logs in place so that you see what's happening. And you also have the ROI and observability to tell you, hey, like this is how people are using it. And then you can add additional guardrails. Like since the plane is already flying, people are going to make their own determinations of what's right and what's wrong. And it's your job as an organization to say, okay, well, this is right for us and this is wrong for us. And I think there is that, I think it's part of the earlier conversation. There is the shadow mode that you enable and you see kind of what's happening in the wild, and then you slowly but surely constrain it to something that you feel is acceptable. And everybody's going to make some mistakes. Sometimes you're going to over constrain, and then you're going to have to relax your standards. And I think that's part of the journey. So my thought is, don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to lock anybody immediately. Take it as a measured approach. Don't make it all policy. We need to have the control pass, right? We need to have the model allow list over time, right? We need to appropriately quota and understand what the cost is. You don't want to end up like Uber, right? Where you blow through your budget in 4 months. So I think it's like there is, I don't envy the executive and everything they have to deal with right now, because it's a dance. It's definitely a dance.
On that topic of everything that the executives have to deal with, I think, one of the major ones, and as technologists, it can often be overlooked, is let's talk about the human impact of AI, right? I've worked with executives that are very concerned, right? They don't want AI to become an excuse for staff reductions. It's about improving the efficiency of the organization, and identifying new ways to differentiate and create competitive advantage in their own markets, which makes a lot of sense. In your experience, is AI replacing jobs, or are people just using AI to become more efficient in their existing roles?
I think there's a little bit of both, right? History dictates that when you introduce a force multiplying capability to an enterprise, old jobs get replaced, but it might be it's a replacement that gets enhanced. The same people are doing higher value functions of their previous selves, for the most part. I think that's more the case than just outright replacement, and I think that we cannot allow our people to fall behind as an enterprise, right? That's why I go back to the earlier conversation in this discussion. I think enablement is key. People need to be in it. People need to be eating their own dog food. People need to, people need to experiment and figure out how it's best used in their function. And it's the organization's job to enable that and facilitate that.
Yeah, that brings me to another aspect of this whole AI revolution, and that's the organizational change management aspect of it, right? And I've been doing IT for more years than I care to admit. And when cloud was first coming out, right, there was a lot of concern from the engineering staff who did power pipe and ping, rack stack, right? Oh my gosh, what does this mean to my job? And it's like, it's an opportunity for you to move up the value stack, right? To move closer to where the business value really exists, and let other organizations handle those non-differentiating activities. So I think it's a similar conversation in AI, where we can leverage it to become, as engineers, as technologists, closer to adding direct business value, rather than writing the code and doing the configurations. What are you seeing in that?
Yeah, look, I think if we, I think cloud's a good example. Probably like it's far less transformative than this will be, or this is already, I would say.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
But I think that the lessons are the same. I think the winners, the winning organizations are going to keep their engineers and make sure they upskill. And I think the losers are going to be the ones that say, I'm replacing my engineers. I'm adding to my AI budget by replacing or getting rid of engineers. So it's a bit disheartening to see, some of the layoffs and the recent layoffs in the industry. I think, for my sake, I think I've become, it's hard to quantify, 10 to 100 times better leveraging AI. And I think that every engineer with a little bit of curiosity is similar. I don't think I'm special in any way. So I think it
really is an amazing time to be in the. I mean, it's truly revolutionary. This period of time will be studied as the next industrial revolution. I think in terms of the impact to industry, to quality of life across the world. So it really is an exciting time to see it and to be part of it as we help our clients adopt it. So one last question before I let you go. For organizations that are early on in their AI adoption, where should they start? What are some of those first few things that they should address? What questions should they be putting in place? What controls, what policies, what technologies? If I'm just starting out and I say, Roy, help me, what's the answer?
This might sound funny, but I think it's the theme of this discussion. I think the answer is yes. The first answer is yes, and then you look at the visibility. So you look at your traffic, you figure out where shadow AI lives, where your sensitive data lives, where you want to introduce additional protections, right? And you build, again, we're building as everything is flying, but yes, like you take it as a stepwise approach and start kind of honing in on where you need to introduce the proper security measures. And then you add, it's very similar to cloud. You add approved lanes, you add the tooling, you add a model list, you add browser controls if that's required in the organization. So, at your layer 7, at your endpoint where people are accessing your chat platforms, you might say Gemini is good, ChatGPT is good, Anthropic is not good. Or you might say, DeepSeek, not good, right? I think that's these are some of the early steps organizations take. And then the other piece is for our developer friends, my developer friends, is introducing gateways for where that steer traffic And so you could see how developers are using MCPs and agents in the environment, and you're logging them and you're auditing those, and then you're making decisions based on hard data. I think that's the only path at this point. The cat's out of the bag. People are likely, in every organization is out there, using MCPs, using agents, using chat platforms. Now it's time for us to figure out how to responsibly restrict without killing the spirit of innovation.
Wonderful. Well, Roy, thank you for your time. It was great chatting with you today. For our audience, you can find future episodes of the E360 Tech Sessions podcast on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. So thank you, everyone. Roy, again, thanks for your time and your insight.
Thank you. Have a great day. This was great. Thanks, John.
Take care. Bye now.